ONE D&D, you say? Please, call me when the real playtest begins. You know what I'm talking about. The inevitable release of Dungeons & Dragons Finder, Call of Paranoia Wolfrun, 7th Edition Extreme, Lord of the Thaco Unleashed. That's gonna be a game. Today, let's talk about playtesting and its impact on the gaming scene on today's episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello, travelers and tourists. My name is Mark, and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller who can remember a time when playtesting wasn't a thing, and that's how you get atrocities like the D&D 3.5 War Mage. That class was not fair. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about playtesting. Now, really quick, this video is going to be kind of rough. You may have already noticed that it's a different setup, and if my voice sounds a little bit off, after 2.5 years of dodging the pandemic, my family is now wrestling with the pandemic, and as soon as I'm done with this video, I'm probably going to go take a nap. So please forgive the slightly lower production quality, and you can probably just listen to this video because I'm not going to have any fancy graphics on screen or anything like that. But what I wanted to talk about today was playtesting. I'm recording this the day after Wizards of the Coast announced the first ONE D&D playtest packet and has put that out to the public, giving the gaming community a first glimpse of where the game Dungeons & Dragons is going. And there are a lot of different reactions going around to this initial playtest. There are a ton of Pathfinder community memes going, we've seen some of this before. And while there are a number of different things that I could respond to in terms of Wizards of the Coast announcement and what I think it means for the next edition of D&D and what I think it means for the gaming community in general, there is one element of the conversation that I haven't really seen addressed that I would like to talk about. And so today I'm going to talk about playtesting. And to be honest, this is a topic that's already kind of been on my mind. There is a video that I have tried to pull together for this channel like 3 different times now, the hidden strengths of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and every time I've tried to do it, I just haven't been happy with the results, and maybe one day I'll actually get that out to you. But one of the topics from that video, one of the things I actually wanted to discuss was Paizo's approach to playtesting and why I think it is such an important aspect of the success in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And so basically what I want to do today is I'm going to take some of my thoughts and notes on that subject and compare them to what Wizards of the Coast is doing with ONE D&D and the future of their game. And I want to talk a little bit about why I am excited for this ONE D&D playtest and what it signals about the gaming space. And I also want to discuss some of my concerns that come along with this ONE D&D playtest, or more specifically, why I worry that Wizards of the Coast isn't actually giving us a playtest, they're giving us a hype train with a suggestion box. But before I dive into all of that, I guess I'll go ahead and do all the YouTube stuff. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe. You can check out my free Discord and my Patreon. Both of those will be linked in the video description. And of course, I would love for you to jump down into the comments section and give me your thoughts on ONE D&D, on Pathfinder, on playtesting, and on what you think a good model of playtesting is when it comes to the gaming community. Okay, on to the topic at hand, and I will admit this video is probably going to be a little more rambly, but pandemic brain, I guess. But I'd kind of like to talk about some of the good things about playtesting in general and what I think the ONE D&D playtest signals for the TTRPG sphere. I want to talk a little bit about the positive side of the conversation, and then I will move on to some of my concerns about ONE D&D and playtesting and what it means for the gaming sphere as well. So let's start with the positive, which is playtesting exists. So I have been in tabletop RPGs for over 2 decades. I have gamed for a very long time, and I can recall a time where the concept of playtesting for tabletop RPGs was non existent. When Paizo announced their beta playtest of Pathfinder First Edition, that was one of the coolest moments in the history of tabletop gaming for me. And since then, Paizo has really pushed what it means to have playtesting for TTRPGs. Other companies are starting to do playtesting for their TTRPGs as well. And this is a fundamentally amazing thing to me. Like, this is easily one of the best positive developments in the gaming sphere in the last 2 decades, as far as I'm concerned. Companies are taking playtesting very seriously, and companies like Wizards of the Coast are taking playtesting very seriously. You now have not one, but two major forces in the TTRPG sphere, Paizo and Wizards of the Coast, that are making playtesting a serious part of their game development, and this is a good thing. There was a time in the history of TTRPGs where games were developed essentially in secret and then kind of sprung on the community, and while some good games were made in that fashion, I have to say, overall, the influence of playtesting has been wonderful. Like, I remember the jump from D&D 3.5 to D&D 4th edition. And there was no playtest then. It didn't happen. Or, well, no acknowledged playtest. I stand by my belief that Star Wars Saga Edition was Wizards of the Coast playtesting 4E before they ever announced it, but that's another tangent. Now, when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons 4th Edition, there is probably a lot you could go into about why that game did not do as well as it could have, but I think it's pretty easy to say that the lack of playtesting contributed to that game not performing as well as Wizards of the Coast might have hoped. And I even remember in the transition from D&D 3.5 to 4th edition that Wizards of the Coast was often very dismissive and overly critical of their fan base when their fan base was raising concerns about the directions of Dungeons and Dragons. I remember some of the commercials for 4th edition, and it portrayed Wizards of the Coast's customer base as, I hate to say it, as idiots. It was very dismissive and belittling, and I'm just going to be honest, I appreciate the fact that we have moved past that era in gaming. I think one of the best things about playtesting as a concept in TTRPGs is it fundamentally shows a trust for your player base. When you as a company take the time to open up your product design to the customer base and allow the customer base to influence what you are doing, that shows fundamentally that you respect your customer. And Paizo pioneered kind of that model of playtesting, but since the arrival of 5th edition, we've seen Wizards of the Coast kind of pick up similar ideas with their Unearthed Arcana and the different community surveys that they would do that we see going on into ONE D&D now. Just the idea that you want customer feedback on your games is a good thing, and I think that as consumers of TTRPGs, it is to our advantage to support efforts like this. I think anytime a company is willing to do any kind of public playtesting, it is worth our while to lend our voice to the company because they have said they want to hear what we have to say. Now, admittedly, not every company can playtest on the same scale as Paizo or Wizards of the Coast. Not every company can do the extensive game development that would be associated with a public playtest, and I understand that. Smaller companies are going to operate on tighter timelines, and the financial reality of being a smaller company means that a lot of companies are not going to be able to do what Paizo, Wizards of the Coast, and other larger companies can do. But anytime we see public playtesting, I do think that we should encourage that behavior with companies, because I do think that public playtesting is overall a very strong and positive boon to the gaming community. But having said that, I will say that I am a little concerned with the ONE D&D playtest, at least as it has been presented so far. I'm not sure if Wizards of the Coast is actually giving us a playtest. Earlier, in describing ONE D&D and what Wizards of the Coast announced yesterday, I honestly have to say, it didn't sound like a playtest announcement to me. It sounded like a hype train with a suggestion box. That's the terminology I keep coming to. It feels to me like Wizards of the Coast has made their design decisions, and they are using the image of a playtest to generate hype without really seeking the kind of quality public feedback that I think a public playtest lends to the quality of game design. Let me give you an example. So this is the playtest book for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and I'm not going to hold it in frame too much longer because the light's already being wonky. But when Paizo playtested Pathfinder 2nd Edition, one of the things they did is they released that entire book. You got what was essentially a complete game. I could right now run a Pathfinder playtest game for me and my friends, and it would be a full functioning game that we could enjoy. Now, I do think Pathfinder 2e is a superior product because of the playtest, but Paizo gave us a full game and let us as players take a crack at the whole product to determine what was good, what was bad, and to determine what needed to stay. There was an interview early in the history of Pathfinder 2e, and I'm not sure where to find it, but I actually remember listening to some of the developers for 2e talk about how one of the things that scared them when they were doing the playtest is they put in questions, and I remember this from when I was doing feedback on the playtest. They put in questions about the 3-action economy that is now such an iconic part of Pathfinder 2e. When they put those questions in, they were nervous because they're like, if people don't like this, we don't know what we're going to do because we've built an entire game around it. They exposed a critical part of their game to intense public scrutiny, and thankfully it proved popular, but that was a massive risk. And I respect Paizo for doing that. The Pathfinder 2e playtest was a full game, and even in the playtest that Paizo does now, you still get what can essentially be considered fully usable content. Like, the Kineticist playtest is going on right now. I don't think my players are going to get to do it because COVID hit our house. But I can take a fully functioning Kineticist class and use it inside of a fully functioning Pathfinder 2e game right now, a year before the actual book is released. Paizo is giving us a healthy and robust and reasonably complete class for that playtest. When I look at the playtest for ONE D&D, I see here are some backgrounds. I see here are some pieces of spell list. I see small bits and pieces of the game, but not something that you can truly play around with in a meaningful way, and that concerns me. Wizards of the Coast has announced that they intend to release different segments of the playtest kind of one at a time every month so that people can read about and play around with different parts of the game, but my concern there is it's going to be a long time before there is enough of ONE D&D publicly available that a table can actually sit down and play a game. And what's worse, if there is something early in the playtest that doesn't work with something that comes later in the playtest, the earlier playtest is already closed out. That to me speaks to the idea that Wizards of the Coast is open to minor suggestions about their product, but is not open to the kind of intense real-world criticism that could truly develop a top-tier game. Now, I do want to be fair to Wizards of the Coast. Hype is always going to be part of anything that a company does. Paizo, in publishing the Pathfinder Kineticist playtest, is clearly hyping their big book for next year. Hype is always part of the game. That's never going to not be true. But I do think that there is a careful line between seeking genuine feedback from your community and disguising a sales pitch as, we want to hear what you have to say. Now, this video will be going up next week, and maybe by next week, Wizards of the Coast will have announced some different stuff that will completely change my mind on the subject. I don't know. Even if Wizards of the Coast is only seeking small amounts of playtest feedback, I still think that is a positive step for Wizards of the Coast as a company, because ultimately, anytime that a company is involving the customer base in the development of the product, I think it leads to stronger products. And at the end of the day, Pathfinder 2nd Edition, D&D 5.5, 6e, whatever it ends up being called, the TTRPG sphere wins when high-quality games are made. And the more high-quality games there are on the market, the better the market is overall. So I want the next iteration of D&D to be a success. Even if it's not something I'm playing at my table on a regular basis, I know that the community is better off if it is a better game. Right now, my concern is not so much that Wizards of the Coast is doing playtesting, but rather that they're doing playtesting for the wrong reason. They're seeing it as an opportunity to build hype for their product rather than as a real opportunity to engage their fan base and develop what is truly the best version of their game. But I've been rambling long enough, so I think the time has come to turn the conversation over to you. What are your thoughts on playtesting in general, the ONE D&D playtest that Wizards of the Coast is currently doing, and the various playtests that Paizo puts out? What do you think leads to an effective playtest, and how can playtesting be improved upon so that the TTRPG sphere continues to grow and benefit from this process? Jump down to the comment section and let me know what you think. Don't forget the other YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe. Check out my free Discord, my Patreon, links are in the video description. But as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.